Brew. Craig, the expat repat Cass fan, takes over at the top as consolation for Cass's cup loss for him. That I'm sure he's delighted. James Bedford wears the yellow cap this week. Thanks for the people who got their fan views in on those games. Only one Sky game this weekend because they're kind of chocking us full of Sky games over these condensed rounds that we're going to be getting in the next few weeks. So, and also the TV deal seems to have gone off in France. So only one Sky game next week. So make sure you're getting all your fan views on all those other games that we'll all be back in the stadiums for. But thanks for all those fan views, especially on the cup final. It was well responded to. We're now going to do some news in the continued shake-up of the normal rundown. Right, news then from around the world of rugby league, and as teased in the opener, we've got the return of the chairman's statement, and it is not the Championship chairman this time, it is Super League chairman, leading from the front. Wakefield Chief Executive Michael Carter has criticised Rugby Football League's disciplinary process after three players were banned following last week's match against St Helens. Trinity duo Joe Arundel and Ryan Hampshire were both given one match suspensions for dangerous tackles, and St Helens forwards Sione Matautia was famously banned in order to make sure the BBC couldn't run their full piece on the Matautias, even though the piece they ran was pretty good in its own right. Received a 2-match ban from the game, which then was reduced to 1 match on appeal, with one of his charge getting white. We talked about that last week, but he still missed that cup final. In a statement on the club website, Carter wrote, "The club are extremely disappointed to find that following last Friday's game against St Helens, 3 players find themselves suspended, with 1 actually missing a Challenge Cup final. The game was everything rugby league was renowned for," with emphasis on the was. 2 teams going hammer and tongue at each other, and on the final whistle congratulating each other on their respective performances. Monday morning then brings some random charges against Joe Arundel, Ryan Hampshire and Sione Matautia. I've had 2 other CEOs contact me asking what the incidents were because they've watched the video and can't find anything. I'm all for I've missed out a bit where he talks about the individual incidents because it's irrelevant if we're honest. But then he goes on to say, "I'm all for eradicating foul play, but these are just one nameless person's opinion on a Monday morning. In the 8 years I've been in charge, I think I've only appealed 2 charges. That's because it's impossible to win an appeal unless you've enough evidence to free Ronnie Biggs. 3 people sit there, 2 of them not saying anything, with no experience of the modern game, an inability to take any sort of mitigation into account, and an overriding ability to just say guilty. It's just pointless appealing. They just support the match review panel." 2 exclamation marks. "How can that be an equitable process? It would be really interesting to see what percentage of appeals have ever been overturned. You have to prove you're innocent contrary to common law. What a way to feel in an elite sport." Again, emphasis on the elite in a sarky way. "At the time where we are all struggling to fulfill matches through various factors, to lose 2 players to these offences," with special sarcastic emphasis again, "just takes the biscuit. There is no accountability at all within the process. Therefore, as things stand, we have 14 currently training and available to play, as our academy is being kept separate for COVID reasons. We will select some academy lads, but they won't have full training sessions with the first team due to our current COVID protocols. We will, however, fulfil the fixture against Salford on Friday, because unlike some others, this club refuses to put a price on integrity."
Oh, there's a pot full of salt in that. That's
Well, as I said on Twitter, we're all about the fan rant here, and that was a fan rant, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's no more coherent or anything than you'd see on any kind of message board, to be frank. So maybe Michael should have just put it on the Wakefield discussion thread. But anyway, but he wasn't alone. So comments from Catalan Dragons general manager Alex Chan released a statement in support of Carter's comments following James Maloney's 2-match suspension he picked up in their win away at Leeds last Friday. So in a statement on the club's website, Chan wrote, "After leaving the stadium on Tuesday night from the hearing, again I felt deflated and empty. I sometimes question whether it's just me feeling wronged by certain systems in place within our game. But after reading Michael Carter's blog, where he explains his dismay, confusion, and disappointment, I now know I'm not the only one feeling like this. I reflect back to the hearing and previous others in the last 16 or so months about so many things. One thing that stands out to me most is how we're in a multimedia generation with so many modes of tools, with artificial intelligence and programs to bring all aspects of television almost to life with 3D imaging, etc. Then we go to a hearing and have video evidence, which can determine something for the better or the worse, to be of such a low standard, or even times where you cannot have some video angles accessible because it isn't available to be uploaded in time during a hearing. Then to be later told that we should have submitted our video evidence if we wanted to use it as part of our defence. Were we being too presumptuous to think that all angles would be available in the same instant at a hearing? I again agree with Michael that we're losing matches through various factors already. There are players, clubs and supporters getting frustrated and are losing confidence in an inconsistent and sometimes questionable system which threatens the integrity of our game. We are many in hope that the current disparities are regulated and a clearer vision for all to better understand. Wow.
Yeah, strong words. I think it seemed a bit more thought through and stuff, that one, with some kind of criticisms of the nuts and bolts of the process rather than inflammatory stuff about, Ronnie Biggs and whatever.
Yeah, and
might read on a Facebook
I think that's
post.
fine, isn't it? I think I think there should be an expectation that any angle that is available should be available to be reviewed.
What I would say is, if you've had countless times in 16 months where this has happened, then you should be learning that you need to get your processes better. If the RFL's processes don't provide all of this stuff for you, you should be making sure it's provided as well. If that's your experience of how it operates, maybe that is how the process operates, and therefore to expect it to change when you've experienced it before, I would say there's an element of that on yourselves. But at the same time, it is legitimate to point out if footage isn't of sufficient quality, that's not acceptable.
It is. I mean, I appreciate the irony of complaining about a James Maloney suspension for high contact. Considering, look, Stevie Wonder could tell you that James Maloney likes a high tackle. And
he's never watched a game of rugby league in his life.
not that I'm aware of. But yeah, it's just there is an element of Maloney has form. Let's put it that way. The specific things about quality of video, etc. Well, ultimately that means the games have to be filmed in a higher quality, which comes down to if they were available via certain streaming platforms all the time, then you might not necessarily have that problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are talking about something that's filmed at on a camera that's of dubious quality and it's a fair distance from the incident, then you have to review what you review. From my point of view, in terms of the specifics of this, James Maloney, dangerous contact, it should be fairly clear if you've got it on the most basic camera, I would have thought. Is the contact direct with the head? If it is, then the man is guilty as charged, I would have thought.
Well, you don't even need a camera. You just need to know that you've seen James Maloney play rugby league before. But one of the things that I'll pull out from Carter's post
rant
is, and this is where it is ranty, I think, and this is where I would prefer the people running the clubs to leave the ranting to us fans on the message boards and the Facebook pages and the Twitter and what have you, and them to be a bit more considered, in that he doesn't know how many appeals get overturned or not. He doesn't know, yet he's just assuming they never do. And I think it would be better for him to actually investigate that process, rather than go on what it feels like, actually be able to back that up with some sort of evidence-based facts. That's why I didn't want to go into the specific individual incidents like he did and talked into them, because that, in a way, that's not actually important. What's important is the processes, and how are the chairman going to help support the RFL be more transparent and consistent, rather than make it that even if the processes get improved, fans are just going to be angry about it because they feel justified in being angry about it. They're going to be angry about it anyway, and now you're giving them the sort of thing to say that people who run the sport also think it's all wrong. Then yeah, because I get it, because I get annoyed with the current process since it was brought in. At first, when they did those videos with Rod Studd where they actually explained some of the things and some of the things they were focusing on and some of why this was that ban and that was that ban, I thought it was helpful. Those things are always helpful to a point, because then fans will really run with it and try and prove that their guy isn't guilty because someone else might have not got the same charge at some point or what have you. But ultimately, they were trying to explain the process. What I don't like about the current process is if a player is charged, we don't actually get to understand what they've done wrong unless it goes to a hearing. And most of them don't go to a hearing because most of them are done on these, early penalty notice type things that they do, which was brought in to reduce the admin at the RFL's end. But what it has done is, yes, made it one person's opinion, rather than it actually then going to the tribunal after the match review panel people, and actually getting looked at by more than one person who gets to give and have that rounded conversation. Well, yeah, so that's removed a little bit of the understanding of what they're finding wrong with stuff, because you don't get to see that unless they actually go to the hearings. When you actually see the hearings and see the write-ups from the hearings and from the appeals, most of the time it makes sense, but we get angry and annoyed because we don't get to see the explanation of the other offences anymore. All we see now is what they've been charged with, not like... And they're giving us less and less information on the incidents as well. They used to tell us which player the foul was against. Now it just tells us the time, so you have to go back and find it and watch it. It feels like they're trying to reduce the scrutiny of those match review panel decisions, and I do get frustrated with that. So I get where Michael Carter's coming from with that side of things. And I certainly think there's things in the process, Al, that need to be looked at and considered. But what I would like a CEO or a general manager to do is come out with suggestions of making it better and how they can support the RFL to make it a better, more consistent process, rather than expecting the RFL to be perfect, but not letting the RFL have any fucking money from Super League, and not actually researching the things that they're putting across.
Yeah, you're much more likely to get a positive reaction, aren't you, than if you provide some level of suggestion about what the process should be, rather than just saying these three players should not have been found guilty. It's a shocking thing. You have to, a little bit of kind of sugar does wonders for helping these things, because the way that the match review panel is going to react is become more insular, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more challenge that happens, that appears to be basically no better than anyone else ranting and on social media or whatever. They're just gonna narrow it down further, and it's just going to become very, very sparse in terms of what you find out. Because as you said, I too, don't see as much information as we used to do. So yeah, it is a frustrating thing, but you don't solve that by shouty, ranty, because that doesn't work, as far as I'm aware. And let me put it this way: it shouldn't work, because that's not the way that a professional sport goes about things.
No,
as far as I'm concerned.
So some merit in the challenges being raised, but not necessarily the way we would want people in those positions to be raising it.
I'd much rather they'd come together, if they both agreed, with a list of potential suggestions that they could send as a joint, or maybe talk to their fellow kind of senior leaders within the clubs and talk to them about what are their frustrations in the process. Can we get something that is a consensus about potential improvements, rather than people just having a statement war, which is what it might descend into.
Right, let's move on then from that. Leeds Rhinos have signed Huddersfield Giants halfback Aidan Caesar on a 2-year deal from the 2022 season onwards. The 30-year-old joined the Giants for the 2020 season, having played 155 games in